I think everyone's here to talk about the economics of music. You're here specifically about your royalties this evening. But I think the economic model of music is worth talking about in all its many charms. Let me put it that way. I just started a not-for-profit, really with the mission to keep the Royal Room sustainable. And I'm not going to talk about that at any length tonight. It's called the South Hudson Music Project. But we're having an event in 3 weeks where we're going to try to raise money. But the basic principle is this, is that a community venue, even though we sell food and we save alcohol, we serve alcohol. We also save alcohol, but that's a separate subject, and I'm not going to go into that now. The point is that Earshot Jazz or the Seattle Symphony or On the Boards all have kind of a model of being an arts institution. A bar or a club is looked at as a business, and really I want to make the case that it's an arts institution too, and actually maybe one of the most important arts institution because it is the beginning of so much music. It's also able to support artists and bands who are just starting out, artists and bands who want to do smaller projects, artists and bands who want to try something new. And so that's kind of what we're here to do. I really feel like we have national acts here, we have international acts here, but we're primarily here to support the Seattle music community. And with that in mind, I just want to welcome you and thanks so much.
Thank you, Wayne, and thank you to the Royal Room for having us here tonight. Thanks also to the Music Commission, the Seattle Music Commission, for their support in putting this together, as well as Kate Becker at King County. Thank you so much. So now I have the pleasure of introducing our speakers who came all the way from LA to join us today. Yeah, thank you. So we have Tracy Verlinde, who is with BMI. She is the VP of Creative and based in LA. Her career is all about supporting musicians, producers, publishers, and focusing on educating people about how to navigate the music business. We also have Wade Metzler with Sound Exchange, who supports artists and industry relations. He's got a long career in supporting the music and creative industries with a focus on record labels, performance royalties, content licensing, and innovative endeavors. So with that, I would like to welcome you to the stage.
Thank you. So I'm Wade Metzler, as we had just said, I work at Sound Exchange, and this is my old friend, Tracy. I don't want to say old, my longtime friend. Very good. So we're going to talk about the extremely fascinating world of performance royalties. We're Sound Exchange, we represent performing artists and record labels, where at BMI they represent the songwriters and publishers. So we get to cover a big aspect of how you earn performance royalties tonight. So it's pretty cool. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to talk about Sound Exchange. Tracy's going to talk about BMI a little bit afterwards. There is a little bit in between here where it kind of explains a little bit both about how it separates and how we do this. I'm all about being this interactive, so if you guys have a question as we're going through it, please ask. If I'm going to cover it, or if Tracy's going to cover it, we'll probably say, hey, hold off, because I'll cover that here in a minute. But we will have time for questions at the end, too. Okay? So I am going to start with a video about Sound Exchange, and because it really helps, truthfully, hopefully. Let's see.
Sound Exchange is an independent nonprofit at the center of the digital music industry. We represent all artists and record labels in the Sound Exchange is an independent nonprofit at the center of the digital music industry. We represent all artists and record labels in the Library of Congress and ensure artists and record labels
This is the remix version.
Sound Exchange on digital radio. The Library of Congress designated Sound Exchange to administer a license that enables digital radio service to stream any commercially available sound exchange.
We're going to Mac, so I don't know. Hold on. Thank you very much.
Sound Exchange is an independent nonprofit at the center of the digital music industry. We represent all artists and record labels in the digital music space and ensure artists and record labels are paid when their sound recordings are played on digital radio. The Library of Congress designated Sound Exchange to administer a license that enables digital radio services to stream any commercially available sound recording. We collect digital performance royalties from digital radio services like Pandora, SiriusXM, Music Choice, and more than 2,500 other services. We pay those royalties to featured artists, rights owners, which is oftentimes the record label, and non-featured artists such as session musicians and backup vocalists. How does it work? When digital radio services play a recording, they must pay royalties to the recording artist, the record label, the songwriter, and the publisher. Let's take the songwriter first. If Jessie, the songwriter, writes the song of the summer, Jessie and her publisher own the copyright to the notes and the lyrics. Typically, Jessie would sign up with ASCAP, BMI, or CSAC, which would pay her and her publisher royalties. But if Taylor, the recording artist, records Jessie's Song of the Summer on his record label, Taylor or his record label owns the copyright to the recording. Taylor and his record label register with Sound Exchange for free. Digital radio services send a playlist and money to Sound Exchange, which combs through billions of lines of data to ensure that Taylor and his record label are paid accurately. We pay the featured artist 45% of the royalties. In this example, that's Taylor. We pay the rights owner 50% of the royalties. In this example, that's the record label. In addition, non-featured artists are paid into a separate account by us. If a band is registered with Sound Exchange, the money is split, oftentimes equally, or as directed by the band. And it's not just music. We pay the creators and rights owners of any recording played on digital radio, including recordings from comedians, actors, and spoken word artists. To receive the royalties, artists and rights owners only need to register with Sound Exchange. Some artists and rights owners don't know they are entitled to royalties and may already have money waiting for them. Registration is fast and free, so register today. Sound Exchange is moving the music industry forward. This is Sound Exchange.
Okay, I'm done. Tracy? Just kidding. So we're going to go over, and obviously that explains it kind of a little bit of overview, so we're going to dig a little bit deeper here. So we have two kinds of copyright. So there's musical composition, which is the notes and lyrics side, and in this example, it's Otis Redding and the recording of Respect. So we have the sound, and then we have the sound recording side, or the fixation of sounds, which in this case, who made it very popular is Aretha Franklin. So who administers the performance royalties for this? On the music composition side, ASCAP, BMI, CSAC. On the Aretha Franklin side would strictly be Sound Exchange, which represent the artists and the copyright holders, which is usually the record label. Statutory royalties. So statutory royalties, Sound Exchange, which Tracy will talk more on this, on what they cover compared to what we do, because it's different, especially in the United States. So statutory royalties on the Sound Exchange side mainly come from satellite radio, internet radio, and cable TV. So we're really looking at some of your main ones, like the biggest being SiriusXM, Pandora, iHeartRadio, Music Choice. We do not pay royalties on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, SoundCloud. And this is because an indirect license or a non-interactive license is a radio-like service. So a radio-like service being SiriusXM or being Pandora, where you can choose, we use the Seattle artists, we'll say you can choose Band of Horses radio, but you can't use Band of Horses the song, you can't pick Band of Horses the song The Funeral, like you can on an interactive service like Spotify. Make sense? So it's a radio-like service. Non-interactive, or an interactive, goes through a direct license, and they go through direct licenses through the label themselves. And depending on what your deal is with the label, say a DSP like Spotify or Apple Music, they have a direct license with your label. Depending on what your deal is with your label is how you get paid out on what your plays are. When it comes to statutory license or a non-interactive play, that is a certain payment that is paid to the artist and everybody's paid the same no matter what happens. So that money comes to, say, SiriusXM. They take their playlists and their certain percentage of what they make in subscription revenues gets paid into Sound Exchange. We monitor everything that's being played there and gets paid out to the artists themselves, half to the artist, half to the record label. Take a stab at what you think one play on SiriusXM makes.
A farthing.
How much?
A farthing.
What the hell does that mean?
Is where the Beatles were paid.
Okay, so about $50, 50, per play. So that means $50 per play if you're on SiriusXM. So what happened was, in just over the past year, we did a new deal with SiriusXM right before the Music Modernization Act. That was able to, first it was around $20-some that you would earn on there, but we were able to negotiate a better rate for the artists themselves. So that says, no matter what station you're played on or who you are, if you're Madonna or if you're band X that is being played on there, you earn the same amount. So that's $50 that's going to come for a play, and that's $25. It's split. We'll get into it, but it's split between your record label and yourselves. So getting a play on there, and then not only on one station, but then all of a sudden being maybe revolved around SiriusXMU into All Nation, into Spectrum, whatever. If you start getting revolved around in heaven, it's getting airplay on all those. Obviously, it's a substantial amount of income that comes in. So, as I said, 50% goes to the record label, 45% goes directly to the performing artist, 5% goes into the AFM Musicians Fund, and this is for background musicians and session players and background vocalists. So that 5% comes directly off the top. If you are a background vocalist or a background session player, you would collect directly from there. I'm talking a little bit fast here tonight, so if you guys have questions, seriously, just tell me to stop, raise. So registration, you register online. What I did in the back is I had the hotel printed out, so it's not pretty, but there is a little kind of best practices guide that you guys can kind of take and be able to walk directly through the registration process. Then once you register, there is a Sound Exchange Direct account which is set up for you where you're able to upload all of your repertoire forms. So obviously if you don't, this is the same with BMI, you need to register your works. Obviously if we get a play or a report in from SiriusXM, Pandora, whatever, and you haven't registered your work, we're not for sure where it goes. So it's up to you guys to make sure that you go into your portal and make sure that everything is registered and everything is split up correctly. So if you have a band, and you guys are all 4-piece band, and you guys are represented in 25% a piece, then you guys all sign up and you put in your 25% and you all get paid separately. Make sense? Okay, so innovation drives results. We distribute royalties on a monthly basis. We pay out the majority of royalties within 45 days of receipt, meaning as soon as we get our report from we represent about 3,500 different streaming stations that report into us. Within 45 days that we get the report in, we get that out the door. And usually about 96% of that is able to go directly to the artist. There's also, because everybody has put in their repertoire and we know where it goes, the other percentage we have to go find. So it's either we have to do some manual labor and find out exactly who it goes, or we have to go find this person. Say if it's the new artist that doesn't know about Sound Exchange and hasn't signed up yet, we have to go find them and obviously get them signed up so they can get paid. We give up money all the time. This is some of my favorite stuff. Is where I'm able to go to a management company and I look up their full management lists, and always I find there is a list of artists, even though these are professional managers, that still haven't signed up at Sound Exchange and we have money waiting. Those are great phone calls. So Sound Exchange distribution. So Tracy will talk about more about BMI's been around for ages. But Sound Exchange is strictly on a non-interactive side, and it's strictly on digital streaming. So it didn't start until around our first payment, 2005. So you can see as this hockey stick curve that has now developed from the streaming royalties that has come in. This year, it started at about $20 million that we gave out. Last year was just under $1 billion. We'll give out well over $1 billion this year. You can see that kind of dip there. That happened when Pandora went into three different services, where they have a $9.99 level, which is like a Spotify type level. And then they have where we used to represent all of Pandora and everything that they did. Now they represent as $9.99 level that goes into the interactive side, $4.99 level, which goes into the interactive side, but the freemium side that they still have, which is still their biggest, comes through us.
I have a question.
Yes?
So you're talking about $50 for a play. How come when I get my readout, it's like 0.002 cents or something?
It depends where you're being played. So it depends where you're being played. So now, if you're talking about a play on Pandora, that is about 1/4 cent per stream. But if you listen to a song 10,000 times, that's 10,000 streams. But if one song is played to 10,000 people, that's 10,000 streams. So that's where those 1/4 cent add up.
Well, how's that the same as $50?
I'm talking about Sirius XM. So every DSP or every station that reports into us pays slightly different depending on how they operate. So with Sirius XM, they work on a subscription basis, and they're huge. So they get subscriptions in the billions of dollars. So there's 60% that comes in, 16% that comes into us to make sure that the artists that everybody's being played on there gets paid out. Okay. When you're talking about Sirius or Pandora, you're talking about advertising revenues. So it depends on how much they're taking in advertising revenues to be that you get your piece of the pie.
So we want to be on Sirius XM.
I would suggest it.
Well,
I would highly, highly suggest
are
it.
there any other questions? You want to wait?
No, go ahead.
Go ahead, take us through.
How are you different from Create Music Group?
So Create Music Group does nothing of what we do. So what we do is we're ASCAP, BMI, and CSAC, where they represent the performers, the publishers and the songwriters. Sound Exchange is really the only game in town for representing the performers and the record labels of that song. So there's no other license that would go to anybody else for that type of play except into us, and that's a non-interactive play.
Okay, so I got it.
Yeah.
First of all, how does Sound Exchange get compensated?
So we're a non-for-profit organization. We take it takes about last year I think it was 4.5% of everything that we took in to actually run the company.
Okay, my music is created, hasn't been distributed yet. Should I wait till it's distributed or about to be distributed before I register at Sound Exchange?
Either way. So if you're well-oiled enough to make sure that when it's distributed that you take care of it, yes. But if you have time to go ahead and do it, just do it.
And is this PowerPoint available to us?
Is the PowerPoint available to you? I can make it available.
Okay,
Yep.
okay, thanks.
Yep. Yes, Orange Hat.
You had mentioned in passing that if you had something that was already created and had been in the universe for some time and then you registered, in that case, can you retroactively?
3 years.
3 years?
3 years. So what happens is, and this is a statute that made by the government where we're able to go back 3 years and pay you on that. Once that 3 years has expired, then we do a pool release to the rest of the members of Sound Exchange from there, and it's just part of the law. Yes?
So I've got kind of two questions, I think, but I'll just start with one for now. And so if you were in a band that did reasonably well or many years ago, but you haven't seen any royalties at all, and it's well over 3 years, what do you do in that situation?
Unfortunately, it only goes back 3 years on our side, so if it's something that has, but you have to look at, so if it did really well, did it do really well on Sirius XM and Pandora and streaming? I mean, you have to look at it that way. So, or did it do really well in sales? If it did really well, if you guys were killing it in the 2000s on Sirius XM, then unfortunately you're out of it. But if it was just something that we don't represent, then it doesn't make any, it doesn't matter.
Okay.
And what was your second part?
The second question was, we're talking a lot about, and maybe this is out of your range because you are Sound Exchange. So
Well, there's nothing out of my range.
Okay, so getting even on Sirius XM and all that, the vehicle is usually you get a licensing team that helps you, or how is it that you even make it onto these things in the first place?
Great question, and that's something that I definitely is out of my realm. Yeah, it's really, it's your label, it's your distribution company. So your distribution company will have a relationship with all of these people, and they work with them to get you on playlists, to get you featured, etc. Now there's some little bit, I don't want to say pay for play, but there are definitely advertisements that you can do on these different service providers to make sure that you get seen. But right now, it's being able to get into these algorithms to where that you're played on a lot of these, some of these playlists, to be able to at least get seen.
And even with Sirius XM and like radio, they don't really have playlists, right? Like
No, but I mean, it's one gigantic playlist, but it's and there's so many different stations that they have. Not that you're just hearing in your car, but there's 100 more online that they're using as well too, and those pay slightly differently, but still, those are ways that your distribution company, depending on who you're with, have a whole team that makes sure that you get played. So, I mean, obviously, they're working as hard as they can to get you played because they get paid at the same time.
Do you have any ties with digital distribution companies like CD Baby or DistroKid? So, for example, if you've already signed up for distribution through one of those, do you also suggest that you register with your company as well?
Oh, you have to. So CD Baby, so if say, take CD Baby, they will sign up as the distributor of your music. But if you have to sign up to be able to collect. So they can collect on their side depending on what they're representing. But you have to be able to collect on your side. So when we talked about 50% going to the record label, 50% going to the performance royalties, or to the performer of it, 45 and 5. If you are your own record label, you have to sign up as a performer and as the rights owner. So that means, so now you're earning 95% of what comes in. So if you are with CD Baby and you're your own rights owner and you're just distributing through them, you sign up as a record, or as your record label, as a rights owner, and you sign up as an artist. And that way you receive 95% of that. So when we talk about whatever's coming in from Sirius XM, you collect 95% of what's coming in. Cool. Yes?
So is this like really just for streams, I guess, in the US, or plays in the US?
So sound exchanges. And not, but Tracy will talk more about terrestrial radio and everything. So this is nasty. So in the United States, we don't pay the performing artist for a terrestrial airplay, terrestrial being AM, FM. Okay, so when we did we did the example of Otis Redding and Aretha Franklin. When it's played on terrestrial radio, FM radio here in the States, Otis Redding gets paid from BMI, but Aretha Franklin doesn't receive anything. We're one of 4 industrialized nations in the world that don't pay on a terrestrial radio airplay. North Korea, China, Iraq, and the United States.
We're good company.
So what that means is, not only are we not earning anything, performing artists not earning anything from an AM FM airplay, there's no reciprocation from any other territory, any other country for your airplay that's being played somewhere else. So if you look at the UK, say you're being played on BBC Two, which can earn you about £100 per play. But if you're a US artist and you're played on BBC Two, 0. And my theory is on this, and just my theory, is that since there's so much money coming, advertising revenue that's coming into that terrestrial radio airplay, and why they're earning £100 per play, is because they're probably paying 50-60% of US artists on there, but we don't get paid on it. So all that amount of money goes to everybody else that's being played on there. Sucks. So we are in the process right now, Sound Exchange, BMI helps on this as well too. It's a little advocacy thing that we'll talk a little bit about, of getting a terrestrial airplay for the performer. We've tried before. The NAB, the National Association of Broadcasters, is a very strong group, and it's hard to get that by. Things have changed. We're not looking at, if the only way that you could sell albums, years ago, is if you got airplay on terrestrial radio. Now there's a million other avenues for everybody to sign you. I mean, how many people listen to terrestrial radio anymore? I mean, the only time I hear it is in an Uber, I think. But seriously, we're listening to music in a completely different manner. So hopefully we're able to get this through. It's a $17 billion business that the musicians are not being able to capitalize on.
He has his hands up first.
Go ahead.
Follow up on that, like some radio stations actually have like an online radio station. Is that something that's
Correct. Great question. So that same play that is going through a terrestrial airplay, but it's also streamed online, they have to pay for that online streaming, which goes into Sound Exchange, pays out to you, but on the terrestrial side, they don't have to pay anything.
I'm just curious if your band is in, or your record company is in another country that does pay for play, pay for the radio plays, and then your music's played in the United States, do they have to pay those people?
So it depends. There's these things called the Rome qualifications. And it's a convoluted list of things that if someone's from that country, you can collect on it. If you record it in a different country, sometimes you can collect on it. So there's different qualifications that you can look at, these Rome qualifications, to be able to collect on terrestrial radio.
Just
Sorry.
real quick on that, is it a technological limitation or is it just greed?
Say that again?
Is it a technological limitation or is it just greed?
Greed.
Okay.
Yeah. Is anybody from the NAB here? Sorry. All right, so I'm going to go quickly through this because Tracy has a lot to go through. So international royalties. So we also collect international royalties, and this will be the same with BMI as well too. Is what we do is we have reciprocal agreements with other societies in other countries to be able to collect for what's being played in other societies on non-interactive streaming. Different with BMI, and she'll talk about it. But non-interactive radio is not nearly as big in any other territory than it is in the United States because nobody else has Sirius XM or Pandora. So this is really maybe US and Canada specific that actually have these. I think maybe I'll show you. All right, I'm not going to go through the advocacy stuff or the music monitors. If we have time, I'll go back through the Music Modernization Act. I do want to talk quickly on letters of direction. So for the producers that are in the crowd, we also pay producers on if they are involved in a recording. So what they're able to do is you're able to, through a letter of direction, you're able to fill that out, have it signed by the artist. Say you produce an album, and you get a certain percentage of everything that's earned on that album, 10% if you're lucky, which is awesome. You fill that sheet out, you say, I'm capable of earning 10% on this. We're able to pay the producer out directly from Sound Exchange out of those royalties. Okay. So we're gonna switch over to BMI real quick. She's gonna dazzle you.
How about that? I learned so much. Can I just say that? I've learned
thank you.
so much.
Yeah, sorry that
I
was-
hope you guys have, because I literally have learned so much right now that I'm like, why did I do this before I started in this business? No, that was incredibly, and he's amazing, and he actually comes from the PRO world, so any questions, just go to Wade
Well,
after this.
Tracy and I met years ago because I used to work at ASCAP for 6 years, and so we have been friends, frenemies for a long time.
No, and I will just say this, we always said, just join one of our companies. Just join
I'm
one.
like, yeah, whatever, go talk to Tracy.
Yeah, good, exactly. Quick survey, how many are songwriters in the room, songwriter producers? Okay. How many on the industry side? Hopefully the songwriter and producers also raise their hand for the industry
Sorry,
side.
of the songwriter producers, performing artists as well. Yeah, put it the
Right.
same. Yeah,
Right,
cool.
okay. So I'm gonna make this pretty quick, and pretty, we'll just go through it. I know, Alex, just give us the sign, and then we'll try to stay around and answer any questions. So basically, BMI is a performing rights organization, which means we pay the creators of music from the users of music. And in the US, I need to do this, don't I? Okay, how's that? No,
Wait, it's on here.
it's on here. Presentation. I can continue talking, because I hope that's happening. Okay, so in the US, there's actually 3 companies. Unlike Sound Exchange, there's 3. There's BMI, there's ASCAP, there's CSAC. And if you don't leave with anything else except for sign up to Sound Exchange and sign up to one of the PROs, like that, and make sure you register your songs. If those are the only 3 things you take away, then we've done our job. Because as a songwriter, and that can include a songwriter that's also the performing artist, you need to join a company like BMI or ASCAP or CSAC, or you will not be paid. And BMI, also like Sound Exchange, is a not-for-profit corporation. We were founded in 1937. Both BMI and ASCAP are both not-for-profit corporations under consent decrees by the DOJ. So everything, 10%, we take 10% for operating costs, and 90 cents of every dollar goes back to our songwriters and our publishers. So basically, I'm not going to read along, but I'm just going to give the highlights. We collect performance royalties, as I said, when your songs are performed: radio, television, streaming services, live concerts, small concerts, live concerts. I'll talk about that because a lot of you are performing artists. So I want to go over the services that we offer that maybe aren't as well known as, paying larger artists for when they're getting played on radio, or they're getting played, for television themes and television songs. So here's what BMI does not do. We're not a publisher or a distribution company or a label. We don't pay out mechanical royalties. So that's the sales and downloads of your music. The ISRCs, we'll get to that later. And we don't require, at least BMI, that you set up a publishing company. And we don't have any yearly dues. So similar to Sound Exchange, it's free to join. And it takes about 5 minutes, and you can do it online, and we can walk you through that process after this also.
On both of these, there's absolutely no reason as an artist that you wouldn't sign up for BMI or Sound Exchange. It's just a free service that happens, so if it gets picked up in our surveys or our reports, you get paid.
Exactly. And we'll get I'll get lots of times people say, well, I want to be an independent artist. I don't want to sign up to a big corporation like BMI. Again, if nothing else that you leave with, you've got to sign up with one of the PROs or you will not get paid when your song is publicly performed. You just won't. And unlike Sound Exchange, we do not go back 3 years. We go back maximum usually 9 to 12 months, but we can talk about that separately if there's specific situations with that. So getting started, I'm just gonna whip through this. Joining as a writer takes 5 minutes. We can do it online. There's a join link on our website, completely free. I can again walk you through what that means. Joining as a publisher is a little bit more specific. The word publishing is the most confusing word, I think, in the music.
Publishing is the most confusing.
It is the most, because it can mean 15 different things, which would be another 3-hour lecture. I won't even go into that, but we can talk about that if you do have questions about joining as a publisher.
So you don't have to join as a publisher?
No, you can collect everything through your writer share.
Because I think at ASCAP we
You
had to.
do. And there's benefits to starting a publishing company, which I'll get to. Do you have a question about that right now?
It's just super quick.
Yeah.
So the reason why maybe I play in a 6-person team.
Yeah.
Half ASCAP, half BMI.
Yeah.
We were going to become our own publishing company.
Yep.
Just half of them on ASCAP.
Yep. You're going to have to start 2 publishing companies.
Yeah.
The publisher follows the writer. So if the writer is BMI, the publishing company that will be collecting, if there is a publishing company, will also need to be BMI. Most large publishing companies, most large producers, most large entities have both BMI and ASCAP publishing companies. So exactly, you'll need to do 2 of this, exactly. Okay, so this is how we pay on radio. 60 seconds or more, separate payment for commercial radio, classical radio, again, college radio based on information that is given to us from the stations. So we do not pay currently on bridge or background music or partial performances or station IDs. That we get a lot of those questions sometimes. So TV shows quickly. In the US, neither BMI, ASCAP, or CSAC pays for music in theatrical releases. There is a fancy case that Wade might know that was in the 30s, which, there's a party going on over there. Yeah. Anyways, so basically, if your song is played in a movie that airs in a movie theater, no one is going to pay you in the US from the performing rights side. When it goes to TV, you will be paid. So that is across the board in the US. The PROs do not pay for theatrical releases.
And again, that's in the US, where in European countries and all around, they do pay for it.
Yeah. John Williams, who is one of our obviously largest composers ever, gets paid when any, Jurassic World Park, any of his legendary movies gets played in the theater from every other territory around the world, except for the US, and maybe China, and maybe Iran, and maybe one of the other ones he was mentioning. Okay, commercials, again, commercial jingle. I'm gonna go over these are pretty specific, so I'm gonna try to keep it as broad and as informative as possible, and then we can kind of, Alex, how are we doing on time? Okay, we'll get to it in a minute. Okay, so here's the streaming services. Royalties this is where it is a little bit different than Sound Exchange. So we do pay out on streaming services like Pandora and Spotify and Apple Music and Tidal and Amazon, etc. when those songs are streamed. We also do pay on YouTube. That is a platform that needs to have the video, that needs to be monetized. And people all the time ask us, well, how do I get my video monetized? There are specific companies, and I'm not going to sit there and say which ones are good or which ones are not so good, that will help you. It's basically a video, it's not a parakeet singing your song, it's when there's actually an ad with that particular video, and all of the parties have been deemed the correct songwriters and publishers on that work. So unfortunately, cat videos don't get paid unless it's an official cat video that some label has commissioned to be the official video for an artist, which would actually be a really smart idea. I know, me too. I know. Screw these nonprofits. You're not going into business. Okay. Sorry. No. Anyways, okay. So that's a little joke. Okay. So a lot of you, I saw hands went up in terms of performing artists. How many perform live? Okay, great. So here's something that not a lot of our affiliates know about, and it's a program called BMI Live. And many years ago, we would pay for the top concerts. We still do for the top 300 concerts, including opening acts. So that's key. But for those, younger and developing artists who were touring a lot and making a living, we felt that there was a real need to make sure that they were compensated. So we started a program called BMI Live. I think it's been about 15 years now. And there is a separate way that on our website I can walk you through that you actually have to sign up. So you first need to sign up as a songwriter with BMI. And then the second part is once you need to register for BMI Live. So they are two separate, they are under the BMI umbrella, but they're two separate services. We pay on live performances based on the set list that you provide and based on the venue information that you also provide. So that is something you will need. There's some kind of things that need to be in place, such as direct deposit and certain things like that. The set list needs to be, like I said, within a certain time frame. The venues need to be included. We need some information based on each and every one of those shows, but it's been a fantastic program. And I don't think the slide's here, but we've had artists say, you've helped me pay my rent, you've helped me buy a van, you've helped me pay off my student loan payment for the next 6 months based on what I earned. And that has been a really very gratifying program that we started, so it's key, yes.
So this applies to like bar bands too. So if I'm a bar band, they play China Grove or something.
Those are not when you're doing, well, if you're doing covers, you mean cover songs.
Let me flip it.
Okay.
The China Grove band is playing my song.
Uh-huh.
I think my wife's brother-in-law used to pop into bars and kind of get people to make sure they pay for their royalties.
Yeah, there's right.
So it's kind of an honor system then. If somebody's playing my song, it's up to them to make sure I get paid.
Well, you hope that, yes and no. I mean, if they're playing only covers, then what it would be is, yes, an honor system in terms of you making sure that those are, they're probably not going to turn in those set lists.
Yeah, right.
That's the problem, because they're not doing originals. Now, you hope that most artists are going to have some originals, they're going to at least want to register a full set list.
Yeah.
So it is, unfortunately, but the good news is if you have that big of a song that a lot of people are playing covers, the good news is you will make up in different sources. So.
Right, Louie.
Yes.
For BMI Live,
Yeah.
does the venue have to be registered with you for the artist to be able to collect money?
They have to be a licensed venue. They do, because that's where the money comes from that's going to go out and pay back to your performances. They have to be. Now, we work with a lot of venues sometimes, because I know sometimes there's been things in the press over the years, BMI ASCAP. We really work kind of collaboratively with venues to try to make sure that they understand what we do and what the value that we provide with that licensing fee and where that money goes, and kind of educating them that goes back into all of your pockets, that we take off, again, 10 cents of every dollar and the rest all go back there. So we've worked very closely with venues over many, many years to make sure that we have that kind of, relationship and that understanding. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good to know, because every deal you see, some of the money gets taken away for BMI ASCAP. So now.
What do you mean every deal?
Like when I have a show at Showbox.
Yeah.
There's
Yes.
percentage of the income
Yeah.
that goes to BMI.
And that's why you need to be doing BMI Live.
Right.
Yeah.
So exactly. I used to be, yeah.
Venues are passing it over onto you.
Yeah.
To pay that fee, unfortunately, and then it's up to you to go claim.
Yeah. I mean, I was a promoter for many, many years, and so my first introductions to BMI and ASCAP was paying on offer sheets. So exactly, which is why 15 years ago, instead of that money not going anywhere, we said there's a real need. These, artists like you are playing these venues that are very important and shows that are crucial to your career. we want to make sure. So you're right. We should, after the fact, talk about getting you with BMI Live if you are touring and playing those type of venues. Yeah.
Just a general question. What happens if I go register at BMI, ASCAP, and CSAC?
No, you can't. That's okay. That's things to keep in mind. I'm going to go over that one second. But
Okay.
in the back, Kate, did you have a question?
Should venues be registered with all three PROs then?
Technically, yes.
Okay.
I mean,
In order to be all.
I will say we, between BMI and ASCAP, we have, I believe, don't quote me on this, and this is not part of the PowerPoint. I believe we have 96% of the repertoire that is, in terms of the copyrights, 96% of the market share, I would say.
So this means like if a band's playing tonight and they're playing a cover song, that means that it's covered through these licenses to make sure that the people that actually, if they're playing one of your songs, that you can actually get paid on it.
Okay, I'm gonna go quickly through, I know we've got to wrap up, sorry, there's like 5 minutes. Thank you for that question, because that's one of the things I usually start with. You cannot be a songwriter with more than one PRO. And if you are registered with one of the foreign PROs, so you're an Australian artist and you're registered with APRA, that's where it gets a little bit more complicated. We can talk about that again after when they kind of end and need to start loading in. But there are some ways that we just have to make sure that those territories are designated. If you're going to stay with APRA, what you're going to do with designating for BMI in the US, if you're going to leave APRA and come to BMI or ASCAP or CSAC. So you cannot be a songwriter currently registered with more than one PRO in the US.
What if I change PROs?
You can change, and there's a window based on your contract of when you can actually terminate and leave. Yeah, that is possible. Do you have a quick question?
Quick question on BMI Live.
Yes.
Is there a version of that that applies to a lot of artists are live streaming their performance from the venue outwards, or if someone is doing their own live stream and they want to use music as like background music from an artist on their stream, Content ID is recognizing a lot of that, like
Yeah.
they're streaming to YouTube of those songs being used. I was wondering if that is being collected.
That's a great question, and I need to, there's specific, I know that there's specific companies that we do have license agreements with, but we'd have to find out specifically in terms of what sites and what we're talking about. But yeah, we can talk more about that. I can get you more information on that. Okay, quick things to keep in mind. Again, register with a PRO, Sound Exchange, register your songs, register them in a timely fashion. There's no way if the songs are not registered, even if you are registered as a songwriter, that we're gonna be able to collect for those performances. Make sure that you've set up your online services. IPI will go over it. That's,
Talk a little bit about all of the great showcases.
oh my gosh, you're right. I was gonna go over all that stuff. Okay, yes, we were talking about this before. So people will always ask me, what's the difference between BMI, ASCAP, and CSAC? CSAC is a for-profit company. I don't know much about them. You have to be accepted. They have a smaller market share. It's just, it's a different company than either one of us have worked. BMI or ASCAP are, the similarities are far greater than the differences. I will tell you the one difference that I've seen while I've been at BMI a long time. As Wade mentioned, I'm an old friend, but I've been at BMI for a long time, and when Wade was at ASCAP, they were very, Seattle is this is a market that's really near and dear to my heart, as it is to Wade's, and so we would both be up here, and half of the bands were with ASCAP and half the bands were with BMI. And over the last 15 or so years, probably the last 10, we've really, I will say this is one of the differences in terms of we've really made a push to do things that are a little out of the normal BMI or out of the PRO. We now have, stages at the larger festivals. We do a lot of educational workshops. So we do things like this. We both flew up here for doing this, this is why we want to be here. We want to talk to developing writers. We do things, we have offices in New York, we have offices in Nashville, Puerto Rico, London, Atlanta, and LA. So we do monthly BMI 101s that are free educational workshops. We're producing a workshop next week with Shure microphones. We do a lot of introductions in terms of songwriting. So the fun part of my job is kind of the educational and the creative initiatives in terms of helping develop and kind of navigating the industry. Again, we're not a label. I can't guarantee that you're gonna be played on Sirius. I can't get you, you know, opening for a massive national act, but I can kind of tell you what I'm seeing in terms of being there as a support, showing in terms of what's realistic in terms of the publishing world, what they are signing, what they're not, what labels, what touring, what it takes to actually play on one of the larger festival stages, you know, what it means to have a booking agent versus what it means to have a manager, things like that. So that is one of the key differences that I think BNI and ASCAP really do well than some of our competitors. And I think that we've really kind of made a push and a real initiative in terms of making sure that we're there on the educational and the creative. We're speaking at all different markets all the time, our team, and we really work as a team on things that we're excited about. So we have an indie page, we have a dance page, we have things that are specifically for our film composers, we have things that are specifically for in our Latin market, in our country market, in the Christian, in the R&B and hip hop world. So it's not just limited to one genre. Every genre has something that's going on across the country in all the different offices, and we have a huge advocacy component too, which we were just talking about, which is also very, very key, and we work very closely with Sound Exchange, making sure that you guys get paid as much as possible from all different sources. So you, on behalf of both of us on our companies, we just know that we are working tirelessly to make sure that you guys get every penny that you deserve.
Should we call you if we have a question?
What was that?
Should we call you if we have a question?
Yes, I'm going to give Alex and my email. I don't have cards, but absolutely.
Okay, I signed up BMI. I have some questions I can't find on the website. Can I call someone like you?
Yeah, our office is, there's a live person that answers our phones. Absolutely. So you can call us and then I'll give you my email. Make sure you have that too.
All right, a couple quick questions.
I know, absolutely.
I wonder if it's the same now, but when I joined BMI because it was free, whereas ASCAP cost me money.
Yeah.
Is that still the same?
Yes. They cost money because of the publishing. They had a one-time fee of ASCAP.
Yeah.
They used to have yearly dues, I think, before your time.
Was it?
Yeah, it's still, I mean, there is a fee for publishing, but if we talk, we might be able to figure something out. Yeah.
I don't remember.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so I had a question about actually like when you're receiving your checks.
Yeah.
In the quarterly.
Yes, the quarterly.
Is there anything that can affect how you how fast you actually receive the checks? Like
We only pay quarterly.
Right. Like for example, I mean let's say
You're talking about, it depends on the service and when they report in.
And the territory and the country.
And the territory.
International always takes longer.
That's what I mean. It's like, so if you have a bigger song, it'll probably take longer to receive those royalties than if it was small, I guess.
Not necessarily, it depends on the service and when they're coming in, right? I mean,
It is, and international always.
International, you can be paid yearly, right?
And it sometimes takes up to 2 years to see that money, only because we have to track it from the home society to get to BMI.
Okay.
So international, but domestic should only take 6 to 9 months.
Gotcha. But
Whether it's a big song or it's a medium, played song, it's not,
I got you.
it's not weighted by in terms of the revenue or the performances that you're gonna see.
Yes, sir.
This question's for both of you, but it's just kind of a general question of, if you're familiar with blockchain technology, I was wondering if you guys are working in any area in that space or with cryptocurrency to literally try to help the artists get paid, and there's really no way of us trying to skate around that.
Sorry, you just say blockchain and my face went like this.
Okay, well,
Okay.
It definitely not time to explain it to you, but
No,
I was just
we
curious
know.
if you
I think,
were
I know at least we are, talking, obviously there's not a standardized, we're talking to lots of different companies, but just getting more information, but we're very aware of that,
Okay.
absolutely.
Same here, I just got a call we were walking the door and have a meeting on Friday in regards to that, so.
Okay, I know of a couple artists that are kind of exploring that territory, big artists, and it seems like it's going to be pretty disruptive.
Yeah, there's a lot of managers who are starting their own kind of collective. It's very much at the forefront, yes, but there has not been a standardized yet that we're both saying we are, doing the X, Y, or Z yet. Yeah.
Yes, in the back.
One more.
Thank you.
Last question.
So when you're registering a piece that you may have performed a number of different roles on, you register yourself that way, say as the guitarist, as the bassist, as the drummer, as the things like that, and that's so then you get if you're the lead artist, then you also get some background.
It all depends on your band agreement. So if you're in a band agreement where you are, it is in your band agreement, you could have a different separate agreement of like how much you wrote. Say you're the writer of that song and you're 100%. You're going to say 100% to BMI, but say hey, you're splitting the royalties 25% between all four of you on your performance side of it. Then you register it that way. So it all depends on your repertoire sheet and what you turn in and what your band agreement is.
Just to add to that, BMI, we songwriters and publishers. We don't, whether you're the artist, whether you're the drummer, whether you're a songwriter or you're a publisher, so it is a little different with the PROs. It's not specifically about roles and in terms of, how you get paid. If you get multiple payments, it's basically just if you are listed as a songwriter, you would be paid.
And is there any automatic listing of the musicians union if for instance the contract?
That's completely, not with us, that's so separate, no.
With the musicians union, you have to register directly with them to be able to be compensated for that piece.
I think the opening act is over. The headline is over.
So if you guys have any questions, we'll be hanging out for a minute. You can just come up there. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Wade and Tracy. Like they said, they will be around for your questions. Thank you for all your wonderful questions. I sure learned a lot.